Hello everyone, in today's video we will continue talking about negative numbers. We will start off by doing some comparisons here based on everything is going to be based on the rules that we learned yesterday. So let's get started with our comparisons. If you remember yesterday's rules about how we compare, remember that you know how to do positive with positive, and you can see here I've already put color around each number to show if they are positive or negative. So you already know how to do positive with positive. And then we talked about how to do positive with negative or flipped, and then negative with negative. So you already know how to do positive with positive. So here, for example, where we have 15 and 33, you know that 33 is more than 15. But then we have positive with negative. And if you remember the rule that we said yesterday about comparing positive numbers with negative numbers, the rule was that positive numbers are always greater than negative numbers. So for example here, I'm comparing 2 with minus 5. Well, 2, and again, the further to the right that a number is, the bigger it is, right? The greater it is. So 2 is here, and the minus 5 is here. So minus 5 is smaller than 2. And all the negative numbers are smaller than any positive number. So next up, again, we have minus 11 and 1. You can see minus 11 is here, 1 is here. So 1 is more than minus 11. Next, we have minus 7 with 0. And if you remember, we also talked about 0 and that 0, 2 is greater than the negative numbers. Because you can see here minus 7 is here, whereas 0 is here. It is further to the right, so it is greater. So 0 is more than minus 7. Then we have minus 5 with minus 2. So minus 5 is here, minus 2 is here. It is further to the right. So minus 2 is greater. Here we had an example of a negative with a negative number. And basically what we said is that it's the opposite of how it would be if the numbers were positive. So if they were positive, 5 would be greater than 2. But because they are negative, minus 5 is further to the left than minus 2, which is more to the right. So minus 2 is greater. So the closer the number is to 0, the greater it is, right? So if we have minus a million, let's say, that's a very small number compared to minus 2, for example, which is much closer to 0. Next up, when I say small, I mean less. It's less. Then we have minus 9 with minus 11. Minus 9 is here. It is closer to 0 than minus 11, which is here. So minus 9 is greater. Then we have minus 4 on one side and minus 4 on the other. Since they are exactly the same, I would say that these two numbers are equal. And yes, in case any of you were wondering, negative numbers can be equal, just like positive numbers. Next, let's move on to the additions and subtractions. So you can see here that we basically have every case possible for what number is in front, whether or not I'm adding or subtracting, and what number comes second. Okay, so 5 plus minus 6, 5 plus 6, 5 minus 6, 5 minus minus 6. And again, I want to remind you that if the numbers do not have a sign in front of them, so here, for example, the 5 has no sign in front of it, it's like there's a plus. It is implied that the number is positive. So here, even though the 6 has a minus in front of it, that's just showing us what operation we're doing. It's not telling us that 6 is a negative number. It is, in fact, a positive number. despite the fact that it has a minus here. You can think about it like this. The first sign in each operation shows us the operation that we're doing. So the plus shows us that we're doing addition. This is an addition. This is a subtraction, subtraction, addition, subtraction, addition, subtraction. It's the second sign, if there is one, that shows me whether or not the second number is positive or negative. If there's a minus, then the number is negative. If there's nothing, then it's implied that there's a plus here, and the number is positive. All right, so I want you to remember our two rules from yesterday. Those are the most important. That one, adding a negative number is the same as subtracting its positive, and two, that subtracting a negative is the same as adding its positive. If you don't have them written down from yesterday anywhere, I would suggest that you have them written down somewhere so that you can look to them. Again, I said this yesterday as well, but I'm going to say it again. The first number does not matter. What does matter is what is going on in here between the two numbers. That's mainly what we're interested in, because this is what is going to basically change. You're going to see what I mean by that. The first number is always going to stay the same. If there's a 5 in front, it's going to stay 5. If it's a minus 5, it's going to stay minus 5. So let's get started immediately. All right. We have 5 plus minus 6. Now immediately we have rule number 1, where we are adding a negative number. And if you remember, rule number 1 says that that is the same as subtracting its positive. So again, the first number stays the same. 5 is just 5. And then what did we say? Adding a negative number is the same as subtracting as positive. So plus minus 6 is the same thing as saying minus 6. It's actually right a little closer. It's the same as saying minus 6. And now we can do this a little easier. 5 minus 6. That means we're at 5, and we take 6 steps back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We get to minus 1. Let's move all of this a little bit. Now, some of you may have already noticed that there is a trick we could do. You may have noticed that, because 6 is more than 5, what's basically going to happen is from the 6 that I'm subtracting, 5 are needed to get to 0, and then I just need to take one more step back, so that's minus 1. Basically, it's like saying because now in this subtraction, the second number is greater than the first one, the subtraction is going to be equal to the negative of their difference. So what do I mean by that? If I had 6 minus 5, the result would be 1. Because now it's 5 minus 6, the result is minus 1. It's the negative of the difference that I would have gotten if they were in the order we were used to. All right, let's move on. Here we have 5 plus 6. It's very important to not forget what we already know, right? So if you see this in all this, don't forget that this is just 5 plus 6. You know how to do 5 plus 6. 5 plus 6 is 11. There's nothing more that's needed here. So don't get confused. Try to avoid getting confused by things that you already know. Don't forget things you already know. Here we have 5 minus 6. All right, well, we've already done 5 minus 6 up here, and we found that it was minus 1. It was negative 1. All right, so we don't need to do it again. Minus 1. All right. Here we have a case where we are subtracting a negative number. And this is where rule number 2 comes in. Rule number 2 stated that subtracting a negative was the same as adding its positive. So 5 minus 6 is going to become 5 plus 6. And 5 plus 6 is 11. All right, next up, we have minus 5 plus 6. All right, so here we are adding a positive, so let's do that. There's no need to change anything. You'll notice already that the only cases where we need to change the addition or subtraction, we need to rewrite it, is when the second number is negative. So here we needed to rewrite it because the second number was minus 6 in both of these. So here we have minus 5 plus 6. So that means we are at minus 5. That's the first number. And we're adding 6. So we're taking 6 steps to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we get to 1. There we go. Next up, we have minus 5 minus 6. We're at minus 5, but now we are subtracting 6. Because we're subtracting 6, we need to take 6 steps to the left instead of the right this time. When I add, I make the number greater, so I take it this way. When I subtract, I take it the other way. I make it smaller, right? So minus 5, and then 6 steps to the left makes 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We got to minus 11. Next up, here we have minus 5 plus minus 6. Rule number 1 states that adding a negative is the same as subtracting the positive. So minus 5 becomes minus 5 plus negative 6 becomes minus 5 minus 6. Again, adding a negative is the same as subtracting the positive. So this becomes minus 5 minus 6. And we've already done minus 5 minus 6 up here. And it makes minus 11. Here we have minus 5 minus negative 6. And rule 2 states that subtracting a negative is the same as adding the positive. So minus 5 minus negative 6 becomes minus 5 plus 6. And we have already done minus 5 plus 6 up here, and we saw that it made 1. All right, now that you've seen how I solved these, I want you to try and solve these on your own. So pause the video, try to solve these on your own, and then come back to see if you did them correctly. This is very important. You try and do these on your own. Also, however, if you make a mistake, that's perfectly fine. It's complicating. It's complicated. This is a very complicated concept. So it only makes sense if you make mistakes. So pause the video, try and do them on your own, and then come back to see if what you got wrong. All right, so let's do these. We have 4 plus minus 3. Rule number 1 says adding a negative is the same as subtracting the positive. So 4 plus minus 3, 4 plus negative 3 becomes 4 minus 3. And we know how to do 4 minus 3. 4 minus 3 makes 1. And if you doubt that, you can look here and you can go 1, 2, 3. Next up, we have 4 plus 3. Again, let's not forget what we already know. We know how to do 4 plus 3. 4 plus 3 makes 7. Next up here, we have 4 minus 3. We've already done it, and we can do 4 minus 3. 4 minus 3 makes 1. Next up here we have 4 minus 3. 4 minus negative 3. Rule number 2 says subtracting a negative is the same as adding the positive. So 4 minus negative 3 becomes 4 plus 3. And 4 plus 3 makes 7. All right, let's move on to the ones that have a negative 4 up front. Here we have negative 4 plus 3. All right, so since the second number is positive, we don't need to change anything. We don't need to rewrite it. We can just do minus 4 plus 3. Minus 4 plus 1, 2, 3. We got to minus 1. So minus 4 plus 3 makes minus 1, negative 1. Again, I headed 3 steps to the right because I was adding a positive number, meaning I was making this number bigger. I was pulling it towards the positives, right? Next up, we have minus 4 minus 3. So now we're at minus 4, but we are subtracting 3, so we need to head 3 steps the other way, right? So 1, 2, 3, we get to minus 7. So minus 4 minus 3 makes a negative 7. Next up, we have negative 4 plus negative 3. Rule number 1, adding a negative is the same as subtracting a positive. So negative 4 plus negative 3 becomes negative 4 minus 3. And we've already done negative 4 minus 3, and it makes negative 7. And let's move that a little bit. There we go. But we are going to need some room, I think. Okay, next up we have negative 4 minus negative 3. Rule number 2 says subtracting a negative number is the same as adding its positive. So negative 4 minus negative 3 becomes negative 4 plus 3. And we've already done negative 4 plus 3 up here. It makes negative 1. Yeah, let's move all this. Let's move all of it, actually. Whoa. No. Okay, there we go. So now you can see all the answers. Again, look closely. I said it in the beginning as well. I'm going to say it again. Where am I rewriting the additions and the subtractions? When the second number is negative, that's where you need to rewrite it. Whenever the second number is negative, that's when I rewrite it to make it simple. Okay. And then you just go to the number line and you go forward or you go backwards depending on if you're adding or subtracting from wherever the first number is. And again, whether or not the first number is positive or negative does not matter. It only shows us where we start from on the number line. So here it was 5, so we started from here and then added and subtracted and all that. When it was negative 5, we started from here. And that's all it shows us. So that'll be all for today. Go through your worksheets tomorrow and Thursday, and I will see you again Friday. Bye.